Hey, welcome to the Producer Joe Show. This week's episode is a little bit delayed. It was supposed to be earlier in the week, but it's all on me. It was just a crazy week at work, and I just couldn't have pulled it off. It's been really wild, and doesn't matter. I'm happy to have a job. I'm happy to do what I do, and again, this is a hobby, and my career comes first. But anyways, I felt bad because I was really looking forward to it. But here we are. Here we are today. If you can see up in the top right, please subscribe today. YouTube, SD Radio Joe. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you should have a subscribe button. And well, here we go. So my guest today is my friend, Phil Konstantin. I've known Phil quite a number of years, mostly from when I did my radio thing. We'd see each other at all the radio reunions and whatnot. He's a tremendous guy. And the reason that I wanted him to come on here is because he has so many stories to tell. He's had an incredible life of careers, and I do mean plural. I won't spoil it by saying what he's done. I'm sure that he will touch on just about each and every one of them. It's really a fantastic life, and he's been fun to watch through the years, sharing his memories of his life. But anyways, I'm going to bring Phil in right now.
Well,
hey, Phil.
Howdy do there. I'll teach you a little Cherokee. OCO, like the letter O, then the letter C, then the letter O. OCO, that's hello or howdy in Cherokee, which I am also.
OCO.
There you go.
All right. Well,
and actually, we can't talk about all my careers. Your show isn't that long.
Yeah, I know. You have you have a huge breadth of jobs that you have done. And if I'm letting you know right now, if this cat starts meowing because she's in here eating, I'm gonna have to get up for a second and kick her out of the studio. But that's how we roll here. But first thing I have to ask you is, where are you? Are you in a cave? What the heck? Where are you?
And in the deep, dark recesses of my super ego, because everybody says I have a super ego, but I at least admit it. I've been watching too much Frasier reruns here lately, so.
I got you. I just got done watching all of the Cheers episodes, and what a terrific show! What?
Sure was.
Wow.
Both of them. I like Frasier. A little frustrating with, why does he keep doing stupid stuff? But hey, that's comedy.
That's comedy.
One of my taglines for watching movies is somebody says, "Why is he doing that?" And I said, "Because it's in the script."
Yep, because it's in the script. It would be boring otherwise. And sure enough, he didn't meow, but I need to let him out.
That's quite all right. All right, we're going to do some hand puppets. No.
I should have put the on hold music on. Okay. So anyway, it's time to get serious. All right. So again, thank you for coming on, Phil. Phil, why don't you tell me about your origins? Where do you come from? Where did Phil originate?
Well, I was born in a small log cabin. No, wait a minute. No, that's the other guy. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I was the firstborn child of Morris and Lila Konstantin, and it's been steadily downhill ever since. I try to be funny.
I got you.
If I am. But grew up in Houston, spent 27 years in Houston, doing all kinds of stuff there, sweating in the summer, sweating in the winter. And eventually moved out here to California in 1980 and have been out here in California ever since. And quite literally, I counted it up one time. It's somewhere around 56, 60 different types of jobs over my lifetime. Now, that doesn't mean I can't hold a job. That means I probably had more than one job at a time. And I also count the little short time or part-time kind of jobs or stuff like that. But a wide variety of things. I'm reminded of a guy who ran for governor some states several years ago, and he spent a day working a different kind of job every day. And he's one of the few people I've ever met that has had more kinds of jobs than I have. And he was just running for office in the process. But that's pretty much me. I'm 71 years old, born just barely in 1952, and have been chugging along ever since.
71.
I'm 52. Oh yeah. I'm 71. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Well, you just proved it right there.
Well, 71 is the year I graduated from high school. So
yeah.
I hear 71. My ears register more to that than my age.
So, so where did you go from Houston, huh? So are you an Astros fan? I doubt that.
Oh, well, I was.
Yeah.
Well, I'm old enough. I was a Colt 45 fan,
Yeah, look at that.
which has nothing to do with the Pistols. But yeah, I enjoyed the Astros when I was out there, and I've become less enamored by professional sports with all the teams that moved away one way or the other. I like the Padres, and they've been pretty good about staying here. You know, people like Tony Gwynn made a real class act, and well, the Crocs actually did pretty well when they came in and took over the Padres. I mean, everybody can disagree about stuff, but I was an Astros fan. I was a real Oilers fan until they moved to Tennessee. And I do lots of videos. I have a travel. It's not just travel, but I have a YouTube channel called Travels with Phil, and I have actually done one of my videos on George Blanda, one of the greatest of all time, and he literally still holds the record for the longest years played in professional football, and he ended up his career in Oakland with the Raiders. But he played for Houston for a long, long time. So I grew up on the Padres. I actually worked in the Astrodome, and one of the early years that the Astrodome was there. So that was an interesting spot where, you know, that's where AstroTurf came from, because they couldn't grow grass in there, no sunshine.
Is that like the eighth wonder? The eighth wonder of the world?
Call it the eighth wonder of the world. The first show they had, there was a Boy Scout Jamboree, and the Boy Scouts usually sold, you know, like 30-40% more tickets for their events, because, you know, some people just donate the money and not show up. Well, it was the first public event for the Astrodome. Everybody came in, so they literally were turning people away who had purchased tickets. What, the Boy Scouts aren't letting us in? But yes, it was a phenomenal spot back when they had the first electronic scoreboard, really cool stuff there. And I helped deliver supplies to all the concession stands there at the Astrodome for a while.
Now, you need to remember to be politically correct. They are no longer the Boy Scouts. They are the Scouts of America. So we need to remember.
Well, they were the Boy Scouts when I was there.
Yeah, I was a Boy Scout as well. And then I would go to the Boys Club after that. Right. But
is it now the People's Club?
It's People's, yeah.
I have nothing.
And I'm trying.
I got nothing against being political. I got nothing against being politically correct, with one exception, and I consider myself an American Indian. A Native American. Where were you born, Joe? Where were you born, Joe?
La Mesa.
Then you're a Native American, by definition.
That's a valid point.
That's the one political thing that I'm not too particularly fond of. But my mom used to call me a Heinz 57 because I'm a little bit of everything, and a little bit European, a little bit Cherokee, a little bit of all kinds of little things out here and there. So. And yeah, actually, I can pull it up here over my face. That's probably the best thing for the viewers. But pulling it up over my face, that's actually Cherokee language. And I speak a few words, know a few of the characters. And it's the only occasion where one individual who was illiterate created an entire language for his own, or created an entire alphabet or written language for his own verbal language. And the guy by the name of Sequoia. You might have heard of him. There's a few trees named after him. We actually have an elementary school not too far from where I live that's named after him as well. So,
before we get too far away from the Astrodome, I'm trying to jog my memory here. Wasn't there a movie film there called The Bees? And didn't they take cover in the Astrodome? I know. I'm an old movie junkie. So
I am too, but I don't remember that one. There was Brewster McCloud, and that was there. But I don't remember the Bees. I wouldn't be surprised by it, to be honest with you. I was also in one called Future World, which was the sequel to Westworld, which they subsequently made a TV series for, and they did a little bit through there, but I don't honestly remember the Bees. And that may have been after I moved out of town. I moved to California in right around 1980. Literally came there from working offshore, and lady out here I decided to eventually get married to, and her father had a job for me out here. We had 11 people killed offshore in the 3 months I was out there, and I said, somebody's trying to tell me something. So I dropped that career. So that's an example of one of the careers I had that didn't last very long, because it turns out it wasn't that safe of a career.
Well, speaking of careers, why don't we go through a little chronology here? And if I see that I've selected your picture for the appropriate topic, I will
Okay.
post the picture. So
All righty.
I did my best here to pick out a little variety.
All right. Well, let's see. I first started working when I was 11, started working regular when I was 14, worked in a lot of motion picture theaters. You may actually have a picture of that one somewhere where you see me standing outside of the Ghost and Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts. That's how old that was. And I helped run the concession stands. I was a human cash register at the age of 14. I had I wasn't a lightning calculator, but I was a pretty darn quick calculator, and I could do all of it in my head. They hadn't even bought a cash register yet. And so I started running the concession stands at the theater, did a bunch of other odd jobs. My dad had a small vending machine company as well as being a deputy sheriff, and I helped him deliver janitorial supplies out there. Eventually, I went to work at NASA, and I worked at NASA through the last two moon missions, Apollo 16 and 17, and all of Skylab. And that's where I spent most of that time downstairs from Mission Control, the place that you saw in all the TV shows and all the movies where you see all the controllers at all the big consoles and, in Houston, we've got a problem. Well, I was downstairs for the last two missions, helping run the computers down there, which I was, one of the smallest cogs in the wheel, but I was very, very, and still am proud of having been even a small cog in that wheel there. And if you come across it, there's an old picture of me where you see me with, well, actually my hair is just about the same length, but it's definitely a different color now because I was one of the youngest people there. I started working at 19 there at NASA. And those were glory days to me. But at the same time, I was also doing radio. I was doing a public affairs program. And back in those days, in the late 70s, every radio station had to do so many public affairs programs, which is usually bringing the local dog catcher on and talking about, there you go. That's my ID card for Apollo 17. And so I did public affairs program on some radio stations while working at NASA and while also going to college at the same time. So I stayed pretty busy, and occasionally I would sleep and try to help raise a family at the same time. So interesting stuff out there. I really liked it. We lived, NASA was just south of Ellington Air Force Base. My dad and mom got married at Ellington Air Force Base, and we lived just north of there. So you'd see the jets flying over. Back in those days, they actually had sonic booms, and you could hear the planes flying over, and then the windows and doors would rattle. You don't hear that much anymore because of the laws that were passed against it. But that was all interesting stuff. Got to meet a lot of astronauts. Excuse me. That's a plaque, one of the guys there in the real-time computer complex, which you can sort of read there on the bottom. That's the symbol for Apollo 17 that I think the astronauts drew them themselves. I can't remember on this particular model, but that was Gene Cernan and Evans and Harrison Schmitt, and that's me and Gene. Gene was the last person to have ever left the surface of the moon. Really intelligent guy, really good speaker. We've met several times. I've interviewed him on TV. You can see I'm wearing my old KUSI 51 Channel 9, whatever the heck it was on digital uniform there. And that was me parlaying my job into getting a chance to sit around and chat with astronauts. And if you want to check out the entire video, Travels with Phil, and you can see we have some interesting conversations going on there. But Gene was a really, really interesting man. Of all the guys that walked on the moon, I think there are still 4 left. And I think Charlie Duke was the guy who was the voice talking to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin when they landed. And he eventually flew on Apollo 16. And he is still the youngest person to have flown on the moon. And he's 89 now. So, landed on the moon.
Growing up,
there's Buzz
Aldrin.
Yep.
Growing up, I was just obsessed with the space program. I mean, my era was obviously more the space shuttle. Right. To me, the most beautiful aircraft I've ever seen in my life. But I've always been obsessed with space and the program.
I actually had it fly over me one time when it was coming into land at Edwards. and you heard a double sonic boom when the space shuttle went over. And I have been out to Kennedy, Kennedy Space Center. Have they changed the name on that one, by the way?
I don't know.
But I've been out there to watch one take off, and I was at the press facility there, which is like 3 miles away. It is as close as anybody can get. And you could feel the heat when the shuttles were going off, and the Saturns, the ones that went to the moon, were even hotter. So it is a fantastic and massive, just massive, massive, massive operation. So I am definitely a space nut. That
was always my dream to see a landing, to see a launch. It never happened, but that was definitely always a dream.
Well, you still can, and as more and more private people get into the business, you might have more chances of doing it as well.
Well, space shuttle. I do follow SpaceX. I do.
Yeah.
Can usually see it right outside the window here with their
every once in a while, if you're lucky and it takes off just before sunset, or you'll see the reflective nature out there of the condensation in the clouds. There's a guy called Citizen Astronaut who does really, really good live coverage of those events. That's also available on the Travels or the YouTube channel, and you can find all kinds of stuff. So yes, Vandenberg is a good spot to go watch one take off if you can find the right place at the right time. The only problem with all of those places is it's always taking off when it's appropriate, so it's not always taking off when it's scheduled. So like our interview today.
Great analogy, yeah.
You can only do it when everything's working right. Otherwise, you lose all of the investment that's involved. And that's, even if it's, just equipment, nobody wants to lose all that equipment, especially, if you have satellites and things like that. Millions, if not almost maybe $1 billion goes in. I've been over to the Jet Propulsion Lab and taking tours over there. And the amount of time and effort that goes into just one satellite is phenomenal. All the work and stuff they have to do. So that's why they're very, very careful about before when they take off to make sure that everything that conceivably can be done is done in such a way that it will be safe to do whatever it is they're going to be doing.
So you were at NASA. Where did that lead you after that? What career?
Well, we ran out of missions. After Skylab, there was nothing for like 3.5 years. And I was literally, the job that everybody jokes about, wanting to have a government job where you're getting paid to do almost nothing. I had 30 minutes worth of work to do in an 8-hour day, but they wanted us to look busy. So I decided to go back to college and get my degree. And so I wound up going to Rice University in Houston after I finished the junior college just around the corner from where everything was. And it was just a case of, and okay, now I'm 71. What was the question again?
It's all right. I understand. What was your next career?
Oh, what was going there? Well, that's about the time that I came out here to California. My soon-to-be father-in-law found me a job doing construction. So I was working in construction for large industrial complexes for like Hughes. I didn't work for Hughes, but we were building a big research facility at El Segundo for Hughes. And so I did a little bit of construction there, a little bit of plumbing on the side, then a little bit more plumbing and less construction. And that led to a whole bunch of other stuff, which led to other stuff, which eventually I got. And in between, one of the last things I did in Texas was working on radio stations doing talk shows. So I was a talk show host for many years in Texas, in Houston and in the suburbs. And eventually, one day, the boss from the home office came in. And this kind of guy would cuss you out to your face if he didn't like what you were doing. Came in and said, "Hey, I got some great new theme song music for you." And I said, "All right." And people were still saying "right on" back in that time. and at the end of the day, the local manager comes in and says, "Well, he loved what you did, but we're changing the entire format, and everybody's fired." And so that's when I got tired of doing what many people told me was a good job, but getting fired when it had nothing to do with me. I literally got hired twice at the same radio station in Texas and never worked a single day there. So that's why I said, okay, fine. I'm never going to go back into radio or TV until I have a pension and I can afford to lose my job. And so when I came out here to California, tried a few things, not questionable, but, marginal kinds of things in hopes that if it went big, then I'd be one of the founders of Microsoft or something like that. Nothing that brilliant, but that kind of, consideration, you were the janitor and you're now worth $7 million kind of thing. And so this wasn't happening very well. So that's when my dad had been a deputy sheriff or a constable or varying shades in thereof. And so that's when I decided to get into the California Highway Patrol. And it had taken so long, I'm being politically correct, I was not officially a member of the Cherokee Nation at that time. And at that time, the state was looking for people who were not just white males to appropriately fill out the number of officers, which I consider to be appropriate. I don't think you not get your job because there's not enough white males, but how are you going to do that? It's hard to deal with. And I'm not all just a white male, but in any case, got in. It had been so long from the time that I applied to the time I got in, I'd actually forgotten I applied. But I literally, you could be no more than 33 and graduate with one or two minor exceptions. And I graduated 1 week before I turned 33. So I was the one of the oldest people in my class and graduated, went to Santa Fe Springs in the LA area for a year and a half, then spent the next, 18 and a half years here in the San Diego area. And after 5 years of being on the road, arrested like 650 people for drunk driving. There you go. That's not one of the people I arrested. That's a mannequin, folks, before you get all upset. That's a mannequin.
That's a mannequin.
We practiced so you could deal with it. And they would show us really gruesome pictures.
Oh, sure.
And of real pictures. So if we weren't going to be able to handle it, we would at least have an opportunity to get out before we wasted everybody's time and all the money it takes to put us through school, because we're paid to be in school there. So we were there for, I think it was 16, 20 weeks, something like that, and then came out in the field. And I enjoyed being on the field, but I was trying to go back to college at that point, and I was working the overnight shift. I enjoy working graveyards. And they changed our starting time, so I was already missing the last 20 minutes of the evening classes, and then they changed us to start 30 minutes early, and it wasn't going to work. So I said, okay, fine. Let me see if I can find a job that's there during the daytime so I can finally graduate, and which I did when I was 39. I graduated from college when I was 39. I ran out of money while going to Rice. And so came back and started working in the public affairs department. And that's eventually where people started seeing me on TV, being called Officer Phil. I mean, and I was an officer. There you go. That was my cadet picture. And so I was, unlike some people on TV like Captain Mike. Captain Mike was a really nice guy. Nothing negative about him, but he wasn't really a captain. Okay. But I really was an officer. So when I was wearing that uniform that you saw me on TV, I really was an officer. And then after I retired from the Highway Patrol in 2005 and started working for eventually KUSI, Channel 10, and then Channel 8, they just kept calling me Officer Phil because that was the nickname everybody called me. And I thought it was sort of nice. I don't like.
Before you get too far away from that, let me ask you why this is captioned the way it is.
ADC, America's Dumbest Criminals. I was interviewed on America's Dumbest Criminals, and these were people who told usually silly stories that are related to law enforcement. And in a case like this, I had a guy that, I was on there about 6 or 7 times. Had a guy that we pulled over for evasive driving, speeding, no license, drunk driving, possession of drugs, 4 or 5, 6 different felonies. And, when he asked us, well, what, when we finally caught him and literally had to drag him out of the car. And so he said, what did you get me for? We go through this laundry list, all these felonies he committed. And then I said, and no seatbelt. He flames out, CHP slang, flames out, got real upset. What do you mean? What do you mean? I did all that stuff, but I had my seatbelt on. I said, no, you didn't have your seatbelt on. It wasn't our priority. But so, silly little things like that. And that was a fun show. I enjoyed watching it. It was on TV for, I think, 4 or 5 years, something like that. But that's why you see that ADC. And actually I have a nice ADC T-shirt somewhere that I wear from time to time.
That's a great story.
Yeah. So this is me back in Houston. I was going to Rice University, taking a documentary class. And so we were going, the sheriff actually contacted us and said, could you guys come in here and do a documentary on the jail? He says, we need to improve the jail. This was the sheriff of Harris County, which is Houston. And he says, we need to improve the jail. So could you guys come in here and do a documentary on the conditions here so that we can convince the public, which means we can convince the politicians who will come up with the money so that we can improve the jail. I mean, they had sewer lines leaking in the jail. not just in the pipes, but leaking through the cells. It was terrible. It was terrible. The sheriff didn't want to have anything to do with it. So
Sure.
I came through there with the documentary crew, and I was doing most of the filming. And so they said, well, here, stand over there and we'll take your picture. And so that they had me standing there. I don't think I had the little card that you put underneath your name, but that is literally the place that you would stand in front of. So when somebody says, how tall are you? I said, all I got to do is look at the picture there, and there you go. Had a little bit longer hair back then.
I think for our next radio reunion, we should superimpose one of those cards on your chest.
There you go.
A T-shirt that you can wear to the radio reunion with that.
I like it. I like it.
That would be funny.
That's one of the few occasions where you'll see me without a mustache.
Yeah. No, I feel you. Okay, so CHP career over.
Yep.
What's next?
That's when I literally had I had a 3-day retirement. Started working for KUSI in studio, being mostly their traffic reporter. They were paying for a traffic reporter, but according to them, they didn't really like any of the people that were offered to them by the reporting services. And so I got to talking with one of the bosses over there, and he says, well, you interested? And I said, sure. And so I was thinking about retiring anyway. And this way, not only did I get to retire after 20 years with the Highway Patrol, then I started getting an income on top of it, which had worked out economically very nicely for me. Right. And so now literally I have, and that was a union job. So now I have 2 pensions and Social Security, which is paying a reasonable amount of money. Although here's an odd fact for folks who are not in law enforcement. Most law enforcement officers, even if you earned a Social Security pension, you don't get the full pension, because Social Security was never intended to be your sole support. It was only intended to be a supplement. And they figured if you've got a pension, you probably don't deserve the full Social Security benefits. So I worked.
Well, that's nice.
I worked 27, 28 years on Social Security jobs, and I only get 2/3 of what I would normally be working if I didn't have a pension elsewhere. Wow. Now I understand their concept. They're trying to make it supplemental. Nobody ever has enough money to pay Social Security, but hey, I earned it. Should get it. Sure. But so I was at KUSI for let's see, from about 2005 to about 2010. They decided that because of all the very attractive young women that were on the other channels, they decided they needed somebody that looked good in women's clothing, and I didn't. So they replaced me with.
Darn it, they sure tried.
Hey, well, no, we didn't try at all. But now they did do a makeover on me once, but not that much of a makeover. They dyed my hair for a while and cut it short and stuff like that, and I thought it was fun. But when my hair grew back out, my hair grew back out. But so I left there and then started flying helicopters. No, flying in helicopters. I was never a helicopter pilot. I try to make a distinction when I've done something that sounds cooler than it really is. Like, hey, I worked in mission control. No, I worked downstairs from mission control at NASA, and I helped from the computers. I was not the primary operator. So when I started in the helicopter, well, this is before we get to the helicopter. These are the 2 guys. I think Graham and Russell from Air Supply, and this is me at KUSI while I was still there and still on the air. And they provided me with the shirts. And if you could, that one, I don't think you could see it. They might be able to see it there on my elbow, but they had KUSI logos, and I still wear those shirts every once in a while just because they were sort of cool looking. They tried to make them look like a uniform without really looking too much like a uniform. That one's the plainest one that I had.
You look speechless. You look like he just said something incredulous.
He asked me a question, and I was going something along the lines of, "Oh, really?" And they were really fun guys. That was one of the coolest things about that job was that was a morning show in San Diego. And because we're close enough to LA, a lot of the stars from Los Angeles would come down here to promote their movies, their songs and whatever. And I got to meet a ton of famous people. Now I also got to meet lots of not so famous people who had done very amazing things like, the Chula Vista baseball club that won the
Little League World Series.
Little League World Series, yeah. Lots and lots of really cool people that were not famous people, and but lots of famous folks. And I mean, my first celebrity there was Dan Aykroyd from Saturday Night Live, and yes, I was definitely a fanboy for that, and got to meet lots of folks that I always wanted to meet. lots of folks I never thought I would ever get to meet. So that was a really cool thing about the job. Now, they were not coming to see me. They were coming to be on the TV station. Only on one or two occasions did I ever actually have somebody semi-famous come by to see me. But that was one of the cool things about the job. And so when they took me off the air there, I started flying in the helicopters for Channel 10 for a couple of years, and then for Channel 8 after that. And then that's how I ended my TV career, doing about 5 or 6 years in the helicopters for the two local stations. And I joked that I had the most expensive tripod in the county. And I took lots and lots of photos.
Going back to the celebrity thing, you do have a photo of not a lot of people like this guy. He's very annoying. He's very grating. He's very different, but I think he's
that's the ticket, eh?
Oh, you got it. I love John Lovitz. It just I hear him off and on like David Spade's podcast and a few others, and he's just so quick and just so dry.
He is really good. I actually have a video of when he was doing a movie with, I think it was City Slickers with Billy Crystal. Oh. And so he's going, well, Phil, what do you think, Phil? Okay, Phil. Well, Phil's not all there, you know. And so I would take little clips of that and use them in some of my own videos. But he was a fun guy. I know a lot of people are about him, but some people, if you look at that photo, said I had more than one person. Is he a brother? Are you related? Oh. And if you look at our chins there a little bit, if we had said we were related, you might believe it. We're not.
I swear he was probably the best thing about the movie A League of Their Own. He
was really good in that movie.
You see, the train moves, not the station. It's just
good one.
Just some of these lines that he has. Haven't you ever heard of a leash? So I almost dropped my first S-bomb on my show. Yeah,
we won't even figure out what kind of tickle it was he was talking about. But
yeah, he
grass, get out there, play. Don't embarrass me.
Man,
I started. Well, I didn't tell you. I started off in motion picture theaters. My dad, along with his many other jobs, was an assistant manager. And I did tell you that I worked at a concession stand. So I saw movies for free for 10, 15 years. And it's really hard for me to pay to go see a movie. Nowadays, it's a different story completely. But I've seen tons and tons and tons and tons of movies. So I have all kinds of quotes from movies that other people go, what?
Oh, that's my whole life. It drives Amy nuts. I mean, even with my daughter, we're like TV and movie quotes all the time. And sometimes she'll just go, what? She goes, oh, it's a movie quote. I'm like, yeah.
Let me give you a thing about famous people. We had some of them that we were doing on satellites, and most of them were doing fine. And in almost every single case, when the stars came to visit us, either by satellite or in studio, they were there to promote something. So they were usually very upbeat, happy. They were there to promote something. So it was to their benefit not to come in and be a real crank. And so we had Renee Zellweger, who was being talked to in her ear about something while the interview was going on, and just kept wandering off into other land. Joan Rivers' daughter, whose name I can't remember.
Rivers.
Yeah, she didn't want to talk about anything, including the stuff she was supposed to talk about.
Wow. But
we had Robert Klein. I don't know if you remember Robert Klein, a comic, and he had his famous routine, "Can't Stop My Leg." And he came on, and of all the people I've ever talked with, they said, "Oh, cool, you're a highway patrol officer. You get to go fast." He's the only one that ever came in and said, "Boy, that must be really gruesome." And he was right. It can be gruesome. Most of the time it's not, but it can be gruesome. And he was one of the few that actually hit on that. And I consider him to be a very intelligent guy. But, Marvin Hamlish, all kinds of other people that are really intelligent folks. And so, the directors of a couple of the Pixar movies were there, which I think is cool. Most people wouldn't recognize them if they saw them, but getting occasionally. There's Robert Klein, very good job, and you'll see about 300 of my photos that I took there are on Wikipedia, because I took them and wanted to share some of them so that other people could get to use them and see them as well. And he was a funny guy. He really was. And he started doing, I can't stop my leg. No se puede mi pierna. He started doing it in Spanish. So he was branching out into other fields. But a lot of comics also can have a serious side. And for you and I probably know this about Robin Williams, he was really serious or extremely quiet when he wasn't quote unquote on, but he could be on almost 24 hours a day. So, you never know about them. Billy Crystal can be very serious as well. Mike Myers is actually sort of, some people call him a bit of a grump. He's not always the cheerful, Wayne's World kind of guy that you see him in the movies. And I'm not saying this is a negative thing about it. It's just, that's not necessarily your personality. So I understand what it's like. I was a minor celebrity here in town. So I understand what it's like to, wonder if somebody's staring at you. Why are they staring at you? Now, I've had this occasion more than once where I was in a grocery store and somebody's watching me. So I don't know if this is somebody I arrested or somebody who knew me from TV.
Yeah, that's scary. That's a scary slope right there.
I had a guy one time follow me, and this is back when people were wearing fanny packs. Except in my case, I was still in the highway patrol, so I had my gun inside my fanny pack. So big old burly biker looking kind of guy, and comes out and says, "Hey, what's in the purse, sweetheart?" I said, "It's Smith & Wesson 4060. Oh, sorry.
Have a good day.
Next. So
yeah. I'm looking here and I see here's channel 10.
We didn't go in the studio very often. We did it a few times in the very beginning, or if some of the equipment wasn't working right. All of those people, I think Leon Smitherman, who's on the left-hand side there, he was the weather guy at that time. He might still be on the air, I think somewhere back in Iowa or the Midwest. Steve Fiorina, he retired the last couple of years. Phoebe Changchua is still doing PR things. I can't remember the exact name of the company she either started or works with, but that they were. I will be absolutely true with you. Every single person I ever worked in local media, with one exception, was really, really good people. And the one person who was the exception was a good person when he was around me. So it was an easy job. I saw a lot of respect. Kimberly Hunt's father was in the highway patrol. So, it's a case where, it wasn't, the quote unquote, snobby anchors. Now I didn't work with every single anchor. There may have been a few out there that weren't so wonderful, but I had a terrible time with Nichelle Nichols, who was on Channel 8 in the morning. I had a terrible time remembering her name. And while she wasn't happy that I couldn't remember her first name all the time, she was very polite and courteous about it. So, I got better than I deserved because I just, for some reason, had a terrible time remembering her name until I remembered that was the first name of Nichelle Nichols, who was Uhura on Star Trek. And then I never forgot her name again. But so lots of nice people. That was me. And you could tell I was a bit chubby at the time and not always the best role model for the highway patrol. But evidently I was reasonably good at talking and remembering things and delivering whatever the message was that we were delivering. So that was one of the days where we actually were in studio doing the broadcast because we weren't able to do it from the CHP offices, which are over in Kearney Mesa. They were all class acts then and still are.
I was looking for a photo here. I was listening to your every word. I promise. I was just looking for a photo here.
Hey, you tell me to start talking, and I'll be here for 20 minutes until you find what you need. As I've said before, shutting me up is the problem, never getting me to talk.
No, I got you. I like it. I'm enthralled with everything you're saying. Yeah, you've definitely met your fair share of interesting people. I see everything that you post, and you had a terrific life. It's a lot of fun.
The thing that I do now is every Monday I release a new video for my YouTube channel, Travels with Phil. Mm-hmm. And that's my pastime now. Hey, I am 71, so I'm not as able to do some of the things I used to be able to do. I don't climb mountains anymore, although that's more of an insurance thing than anything else. But and I actually am still a volunteer school crossing guard at one of the local schools. That keeps me outside, moving around a little bit, and getting some exercise, and using my traffic abilities or skills or whatever it is, experiences to help get the kids safely across the streets there, and occasionally help the school do a few other things out there. But meeting interesting people, people such as yourself. It's not just people who've been in movies or on TV shows. But it's nice to do that. Exchange anything. I did radio interviews for a long time in Houston, and one of the things that when people say, "What was your favorite job?" that was one of my favorites because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do everything. So if I had a chance to share something amazing with somebody who is an expert in the field, at least I got some of the feel for it by sharing those experiences. I once interviewed a guy who was the head of the astronaut program at NASA. And so we did hour-long interviews, and I said, well, what's the hardest decision you ever had to make? And I can't remember the answer, but he gave a good one. Well, when we finished doing the interview, I always played the reel-to-reel tape. We recorded it live on tape. So I recorded it so we could skip through a couple of times just to make sure there was still recording everywhere. And he's staring, looking out the sky. We were in a penthouse of a big building in Houston. And he's just, sort of musing off in the distance. He says, Phil, I just thought of a harder decision I had to make. And I said, well, what was that? And he says, well, I'm the guy that decided you couldn't be over 6 foot tall to be an astronaut. So what's so hard about that? And he says, I'm 6'1".
Huh.
He had to eliminate himself from the astronaut.
Wow.
And
that's something you don't really think about. That's pretty cool.
Yep. And if you look at them, most of the astronauts are roughly my size, 5'9" to 6 foot. Because the less you weigh, the easier you are, and the smaller you are, shorter, not tiny, but more shorter than tall. The less weight it takes, and the less weight it is, the easier they are to get those things where they need to be. Nowadays, it's a different story because you got lots of headroom. Back in those days, I met Wallace Schirra a couple of times, talked with him at home, and he said that I liked Gemini because it was like driving a 2-seat sports car. There wasn't a lot of room, but they weren't going very far in those. And the astronauts were, you think about how easy it would be to be killed in those jobs. And so most of them don't consider themselves heroes. Now, they agree they did brave stuff, but they don't really consider themselves heroes, or he didn't. And so that took a lot of time and effort. Now, the families lost in that operation because the husbands, until they started hiring women as astronauts, were almost always gone working on stuff, planning. There's a movie that's out now called I think it's 1,000,000 Miles from Space. It's about the guy that just wanted to become an astronaut, but he had been a migrant farm worker as a kid. And so he keeps studying, taking classes, learning to fly, learning to scuba dive. And it's a true story. And so he did everything he possibly could to become an astronaut. And I knew I was too wide, even when I was slender and muscular. My shoulders are wide. I have a terrible time in MRI machines because I wind up like this, even if I'm anywhere near the machine, just because my shoulders are wide, not because I'm brawny or strong or whatever. I mean, even when I'm fat, but my shoulders are still too wide. But so there's all kinds of wonderful people out there. The Cherokee Nation did a profile on me for their TV show. And one of the comments that I liked in there was that I made just casually talking with one of the people that was there who was recording it at the time is that, it's just I know it's a gray world out there. Lots of black and white, but there's lots of gray in this world. So there's all kinds of possibilities in the world for people to do things. Some of my travels, I've traveled all over Mexico. I spent 18 months on the road here in the United States. And I remember
that trip. I was fascinated by your travels.
And if I didn't get out there and do it, it would never happen. So it's one of these occasions where I say, okay, fine, I'm going to go. And that's why I retired. When I did retire at 64 was because my dad had a small SUV that he couldn't drive anymore. Or he shouldn't have driven. And he's passed away since then. But so I had a small SUV. I rented out my house to my kids. And so I was taking the money that they were using to pay me rent to pay for my RV, my little trailer around the country. So I traveled like 65,000 miles in the spaces of 18 months. And that's the basis of what a lot of my videos are about. I've gone back and took the videos that I shot when I was in all of these places. Some of them, biggest tourist attractions you'll ever see: Times Square, Niagara Falls, all of those kinds of places, the St. Louis, the Archway, all of those kind of things. But there's some stuff that isn't even on the map. And, you have to work hard to get to some of these places. And I've always enjoyed traveling, trying to get a job as a tour guide now with a local company.
That's the kind of trip I want to, is go see the offbeat things, the harder to find things. I'm going to go back a little bit on two things that
Sure.
we sparked on. You reminded me, I actually have a distant cousin. I've never met him, but he was an astronaut, and it was a little jealous. Daniel Burbank.
Yeah, I'm leaning around here. If you see me squatting, it's not like I'm trying to get my face on the screen. My camera's right in front of me, so I'm trying to get around. I'm not that vain. He looks very, very familiar.
All I really know about him is Daniel Burbank. I think he's from Connecticut.
Yeah.
But just kind of always wanted to meet him, and it's and then you mentioned KUSI a few times. My wife and I went to a show at a local community theater that she did a show in last year, but we went to go see The Odd Couple, Neil Simon's female version of The Odd Couple.
I was going to say, I was going to think it was going to be Doug Friedman, but if it's the female version, no, Doug wouldn't do that.
It's the female version, and it was pretty neat because former KUSI Sasha Fu, there on the right, was in the cast, and that's her new thing now. She's playwright, and
she is an intelligent person. She is a really intelligent person, very well spoken.
Yeah, I did talk to her after the show briefly. Very nice woman. First time I'd had a chance to meet her, but I don't know, something you said made me go get that picture. That's the one I was searching for.
All righty. So, well, the 6 degrees of separation with that is I've actually met Jack Klugman, who did the original Odd Couple.
Yeah.
And he was a fun guy. Now, there's a guy who did both comedy and serious. He did Quincy, which was very, very serious. And then he did all of the Odd Couple and other ones where it was just totally goofy. So there's an actor who can go more directions than just the one that they're expected to.
And I always appreciate that. I love an actor that can do that. I mean, you saw Bill Murray do it back in the 80s with Where the Buffalo Roam.
The Razor's Edge. They did the Razor's Edge.
Yeah.
He did a lot of serious stuff. It wasn't all just that's the fact, Jack.
Right. Great movie. Stripes. So yeah. Anyways, I've got ADHD, so my mind just kind of goes here.
Hey, go for it. My son, who's a really good kid, has ADHD and has had it his entire life. So, well, you can go back to that picture there. That was Channel 8, the helicopter. That's Chopper 8.
Is that Gillespie?
And those are Chopper 8. And those things are notoriously, this particular one, this is a Bell 206 Jet Ranger. I think it's 206 Jet Ranger. And those are drafty. They sometimes leak on the inside. The heater is either 110 or 42. So riding in the back seat was cramped. I didn't get to ride up front. I had to ride in the back because of all the equipment. I ran the cameras, which let me see if you can see it here. You can't see it too well. It would be, there it is. It's the white thing just to the left of my shoulder. And again, I'm not trying to get my face in the picture. I'm trying to look around my own camera. And but I love flying. I've got about 3,000 hours as a passenger in helicopters. Love it. I feel safer in a helicopter than I do in a regular airplane, a small airplane, because the helicopters have a thing called auto rotation. And as long as your blades can still turn, even if there's no power, but if you can put it in neutral, you can still land. You may be landing a little bit hard, but you can still come down and land. Whereas if you're in a small airplane and the motor stops working, you may have a little bit of a glide, but usually not much. And that's why you see so many small plane crashes that end up with very serious injuries. And again, some helicopters do too, but I felt safer that way. And I was very lucky. We had one bird strike when I was in it. We had one little flap on the front that came open while we were flying. We had somebody shooting lasers at us one time, which was not a good idea for the pilot. And we had somebody flying remote control aircraft. They're only supposed to go up to, I think, 500 feet. And they were coming up by us. And we had one guy that was not a very good pilot over at Gillespie, not too far from where you live. And they were running every time we'd turn to get out of the way, they kept turning back into us. And so it was an occasion. Fun thing though was we would fly north along the 15 or the 5 or the 805. We would go past the runways at Miramar, and back then I think it was might have still been Navy, but even if it wasn't, we're flying along like this. We'd have that plane fly over us. We're still going along, and then they would come back the opposite way to land and come back underneath us. So literally have the same F-14, F-18, whatever one it was, fly over us and then fly under us while we're chugging along at 100 miles an hour. Wow. And they were chugging along at 200 miles an hour. So that was fun stuff. Here's a story for you. I like to do odd things for some of my videos. And one of the things is I like to talk about language and the difference between the truth and the whole truth. Here's the truth. I was an instructor at Top Gun. Here's the whole truth. I instructed the crews out there and some of the pilots on the best way to not get arrested for driving under the influence. So the difference between the truth and the whole truth is, yeah, sure, I was an instructor at Top Gun, but I didn't instruct on flying.
That's funny. That's a great story.
You see all those old stories, where the people are raising their hand. You promised to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. That's why they say that, because, well, I told him the truth. Well, no, it wasn't.
Whole truth.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So those were fun. Those were fun times flying, and we got to go up to. We see fires. We see parades. Unfortunately, we'd see funerals. We would see whales on the beach, people marching, people picketing, bad guys running away. They would often send us, it wasn't just traffic, they would often send us out if the police wouldn't let the ground reporters get anywhere near where something was going on, or if it would take too long for the ground reporters to get there, they'd still send them out, but we would fly out first and get over it. So that's why I was reporting more than just traffic. I was also doing news. And one of the nicest compliments the people on TV ever gave me was that they said I was one of the best news reporters they had for live news. I'm not going to say I was the best news reporter for doing an entire package, because almost everybody was better than I am. I mean, I'm okay, but most of them are really, really good. I don't Steve Fiorina, Larry Himmel, all of those folks. No, I can't touch those folks. They're excellent. But I was pretty good on live breaking news. And literally, I think it was Kimberly Hunt that said I was the one that was the first one to say that Junior Seau had died. And I was talking back with her one time. I said, I didn't say he died. She says, no, but what you did say was I was reporting on people coming out of the house. And I said, this is not the sign of somebody who's just been injured. These are people acting, these are relatives trying to catch other relatives before they got in the house. I said, so these are people who are not acting like somebody's just been injured. It looks like it's been extremely serious, if not fatal. And so I wasn't saying, and so there's a difference between the truth and the whole truth. I wasn't trying to say he had died. I'm saying it just didn't look like it. And that's where I have my frustrating with some reporters and a lot of people on YouTube who will blow their headlines way out of proportion. Well, the internet's blowing up because this guy built the only ice cream machine that you can make using 2 tacos and a toothpick, and they want you to just tune in, and even that has nothing to do with whatever it was that they were advertising. So, yeah, I try to be very serious about what I say. Now, I can be silly, don't get me wrong, but I mean, I'm trying to be very, very factual when we're dealing with facts. If I'm just trying to be a silly guy, well, I'm gonna be a silly guy because I like to be a silly guy.
Journalistic integrity.
I try. Yeah. I'm not gonna say I'm 100% correct, but I do try.
Well, I was watching a video the other day. Granted, it was YouTube, and the little thumbnail had a picture of a guy in a hotel room, and the headline was "Man Arrested for Assaulting Children." And the thumbnail had a kid sitting in a chair right next to the man. So by the time the video got to that point, there was no kid in that room. They superimposed a kid in there for the clicks. It's just like, that kind of crap just pisses me off because I can't stand deception.
Yep. Now I may try to point out some of the more potentially popular things in my videos, but I'm not going to make up that, yes, and Joe Piscopo or well, okay, there's 12 of us, which Episcopal is now. But let's just say, Brad Pitt will come tell you why this. No, better yet. Brad Pitt will tell you why this is the best thing you could ever do, and then it's a 3-second thing where Brad Pitt says, "Yeah, it's cool."
Yeah, well, I believe you were referring to Johnny Dangerously, actor. I mean, come on, you can't get anything over on me. Joe Piscopo, Doug and Wendy Weiner, Saturday Night Live.
There you go. Well, I've met Joe, and he was buff. He sure as heck was buff, and he was a fun guy. He was an interesting guy to talk to, and he was another one of those guys that just sort of, not that he disappeared, but some people aren't quite as popular. The story we mentioned before we got on the air here was that at our last radio reunion, I don't look like I did when I was on TV. And for the last couple of years, I was almost never on TV anyway. Or, they may occasionally have just a still shot of me, but you would hear my voice. More people recognize me by my voice than my face, especially now. But he came up to me, and so we were just chatting there, and I didn't recognize him. He didn't recognize me. So he says, well, where did you work? What did you do in radio and TV? And I said, well, I was a highway patrol officer. And he says, oh, really? You were a highway patrol officer? I said, yeah. And he says, well, do you know Officer Phil?
That's funny. Oh, yeah. It kind of
yeah. Well, I am Officer Phil.
Well, it's kind of like when Luke Skywalker met Obi-Wan Kenobi. He goes, well, yeah, he's me.
There you go. I love small world stories.
Sure.
And I've got probably about 12 of them now on my video channel. And, I just think they're really great. We got time for a quick one?
Absolutely.
Or not so quick one. When I first started my traveling, I traveled from April of 2016 through September of 2017. And so I was going along south, trying to get a little bit of my visiting. Well, I went to Houston, which is where my dad lived, and got my trailer. And so I was picking up stuff from the south because I wanted to try and get through there before the hurricane season started in June. And so I was in a little bitty town called Visalia, California. No.
You said Texas.
No, I started in Texas, but this was in Mississippi. Oh. And it might have been Vidalia. But in any case, this is the town where Jerry Lee Lewis and Jimmy Swaggart and Mickey Gilley all came from. And so I'm across the Mississippi River from Natchez. So literally right on it. Now, this was a big RV place. It had like 150 parking places, but there was only about 30 some odd people there. So I'm sitting out there getting ready for the next day, and there was a big RV, and I had a 17-foot trailer and a small SUV, and everything else in there was like the 30 some odd foot, big RV boats kind of stuff. So usually I didn't spend hardly any time at the RV campgrounds except to sleep, and sometimes if I'm just tired, I'd come watch a video on my little setup inside the rig. But I got a call from Phil Blauer. And he says, hey, can you do a play-by-play for us here on a Pursuit? And I said, well, Phil, I retired, back on April 1st. And he says, well, yeah, I knew you retired. He says, but I'm not even in I'm not even in California anymore. I'm in Mississippi. He says, oh. I said, well, so, I'll be happy to talk about it, but I can't do a live play-by-play with somebody because there's no way I could watch it, and, because I'm obviously not in your broadcast area. And he says, well, okay, well, that'll work if you can tell, at least talk about some of the possible things that could have happened or didn't happen or were avoided, all that kind of stuff. I said, okay, cool. But if we do that, I want to use this camera that I've got right here and put it in front of me and then have over my shoulder the Mississippi River, so you could get a little chuckle about that while I'm doing this report about a Pursuit in San Diego. You can see the Mississippi River over my shoulder. And he says, hey, that'll work for me. So we did it, and it came out fairly well. Well, because I was outside and had my camera set up, this far away, so it could show the Mississippi River behind me, I was speaking a little bit louder than normal to make sure that the voice carried through the camera. Sorry if I blew your ears out there. And so after I'd finished doing the report, I'm starting to wrap things up. Well, I see a couple of ladies that I vaguely recognize as being in the rig right next to me. And they come walking by, and being the polite self that I am, I'm by myself. I burp. I used to say, excuse me. But so these ladies walk by me and say, hey, I'm sorry if I was making so much noise, but I was sort of using my TV voice. And the lady says, TV voice? What's a TV voice? And I said, well, I used to be on TV in San Diego, and so I would speak a certain volume on TV. And she looked at me, she says, Phil?
Wow.
Is that you, Phil? And I looked up at her and I said, Jeannie? This lady was my former this lady was my former CHP commander I had worked at with 15 years previously. Had not seen her in 15 years, and she is sitting across in the spot next to me at a small campground in Vidalia, Mississippi, and we probably wouldn't have met if I hadn't done this interview with somebody back in San Diego at the time. So that, and I've got 8 or 9 stories like that, but that is an infinitesimally small world story, and I love those kind of things, coincidences, small world stories, circumstances like that, just out of the ordinary kinds of things. And that one, yeah, that ranks up there with it. That's a pretty good one.
That's a fun story. That's crazy.
Yep. And I got lots of those, and I could go on talking about them all night long because I think they're fun. I used to have a family friend who was a world-class psychic, and she did all kinds of amazing stuff, beyond just, you're not living up to your potential. No, I mean, she did all kinds of things that people couldn't guess, meeting people that you wouldn't expect to meet anywhere. I was up in upstate New York in a small town getting my RV worked on. Some guy sees my Cherokee t-shirt and says, oh, you from Tahlequah, Oklahoma? And I said, no, are you? And he says, well, yeah, I used to live there for about 10 years. And this is a guy in upstate New York who couldn't even pronounce the name Tahlequah, which is the capital city of the Cherokee Nation in eastern Oklahoma. And we bump into each other in a parking lot in upstate New York. So, all kinds of stuff like that goes on. And, is it coincidence? Is it divine intervention? I don't know. Find out maybe after I'm dead. But I love these stories. I was at another one.
Sure.
I was at, you ever heard of the Wave in Arizona? The weird tortured landscape that looks like twisted rocks and things.
Oh, the sandstone, yeah. Yep.
There's probably that picture you see of me standing there with in my hat and my vest and the stick. That's me at the Wave. Well, at that time, only 20 people a day. It's up to 64 now, but only 20 people a day got to go in there because it is sandstone, and they're afraid that it might get all messed up if it just got swamped by people. So they still limit the number of people. At that time, it was only 20 people per day. 10 people could apply online, and 10 people could go in the office. And I'd applied like 3 or 4 times online, never got it, because usually there could be anywhere from like 30 or 40 people to 350 to 400 people from all over the world that want to go see this place because it's just so phenomenal. And so I finally went up there and said, well, I'm going to be here for a week when I was doing my travels. And I said, I'll be here for a week. I'll stay until I win one of the in-house lotteries. And so in this case, I won one, and 3 other guys that were there with me, we all decided to rent an RV together. Not an RV. I decided to rent a 4-wheel drive because the road had been a little bit wet, and this is not the kind of road you want to get on if it's wet, because it can get, the road itself can get muddy. The walking through the rocks isn't so bad, but the road itself to get there can get muddy. So we got out there. Well, at that time they would let tour guides take people out who didn't win the lottery. They could have professional tour guides take somebody out. So we were the second bunch of people that got there. Well, the first tour guide, his people were just wandering around, so he was just doing this because he's been there so many times. It's nothing new to him. And so whenever somebody new would come up, he'd say, hey, where are y'all from? New York or wherever, this kind of stuff. So we were sitting there, and I love to do panoramas. So I was setting up a, 27 picture panorama on one of the signs, and I hear the tour guide going, hey, where are you folks from? And the guy says, San Diego. And I said, wait a minute. Hey, I'm from San Diego. And the guy says, you're from San Diego? I said, yeah, I'm from San Diego. And he says, well, we're really not from San Diego. And I said, oh, where are you from? And he said, Poway. And I said, well, I know where Poway is. This is the entire conversation. And one of the other guys says, is that Phil Konstantin? Yes.
You're a bigger celebrity than you gave yourself credit for, man.
He recognized my voice. Now, I don't think I'm that big a celebrity, but maybe he could remember Officer Phil. Officer Phil was, easy enough to remember, but Phil Konstantin, that was pretty impressive. And so, out of the thousands of people from around the world who could have possibly been there, 2 people from Poway showed up, and one of them happened to know my name. So, definitely a small world. So,
well, you knew your name, so there was 3.
Well, yeah, there was 3. Well, the 3 other guys with me knew my name by this point, hopefully so. But
okay.
It was on it was on my tag too. So all I had to do was walk by and you could see it.
All right, man. Well, I guess we're gonna shut her down now. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I mean, an hour and 5 minutes. That's pretty good. You can talk.
I told you shutting me up was the problem.
That's all right. It was all fun. I'm going to cut you loose now. I'm going to tease my next guest. But
thank you very much for inviting me, Joe. I appreciate it. I like your work. You do a good job, and I like the fact that you've got a quote unquote regular job while you're still trying to live your dream here, doing radio, TV, et cetera, and I appreciate that. And good luck to you on getting more and more viewers.
The radio thing kind of dried up after COVID and all that, and this was the next best thing, and I've enjoyed the heck out of it, and I do appreciate you coming on. If you don't mind,
and my shameless plug, Travels with Phil on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what. If you can go there, subscribe. Phil, I'd like to ask you. I'm going to send you the video. If you don't mind posting this, that would be awesome. Because I'm pretty sure I could have you on again one day, and I'd love to talk to you again, and we will see each other very soon. But in the meantime, thank you very much for coming on. What is you greeted us with the hello in Indian? What is the goodbye?
We don't have one.
You don't have one.
You can make a long conversation, but basically in Cherokee, we know we'll see each other again, so we don't even bring it up.
Peace.
Peace to you too.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Well, that was fun. Thank you for joining us. Next week, not sure exactly what the day is right now that the show will be on, but it's my friend Dave Peters. Dave is a really fun guy. He knows a ton of athletes. He's had his own podcast. He's going to come on and talk about the upcoming NFL season, specifically the Chargers. So I will post when that show will be, and it's going to be a fun show. Definitely sports driven. This guy is packed full of knowledge and information. If you know sports, if you know somebody who does know sports, please share this. And please subscribe. And again, thank you very much for being here. And we'll talk to you real soon. I'll see you later. Bye.